Catherine. Welcome to the Courage to Lead bonus show. How are you today?
I'm so well, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We're so happy that you're here, Catherine. For those of you in the audience who don't yet know Catherine, let me do a short introduction. Katherine McKenzie-Smith is an award-winning business coach, guide, and strategist for introverts and highly sensitive souls, an ideas alchemist, energy and soul medicine practitioner, and the host of Emerge and Expand podcast. Through her one-on-one mentoring group programs and brand new Secret Introverts business membership, Katherine supports gentle leaders to create successful, sustainable businesses through their own innate wisdom and strengths without feeling like they have to change who they are. Katherine has recently won International Coach of the Year 2023, been named a self-help guru by Elle Magazine, Brain's top 500 global entrepreneurs, and featured on the covers of Happiness and Wellbeing magazine and Inspired Coach magazine as well, as well as being featured in a number of publications, podcasts, and websites, including Clio Magazine, Collective Hub, and the Introvert Entrepreneur. Katherine, what an impressive resume. We are so glad that you made it here and so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I can't wait.
So, Katherine, on the Courage to Lead show, we are here inspiring women to know that they truly can have it all. They can have the job or career of their dreams, whatever's fulfilling to them, and they can also have great and wonderful relationships. And I think that's why you and I connected when we first spoke. And so I absolutely love what you do with the Introverted Entrepreneur. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey on how you started that?
Oh my goodness. So I was just actually talking to my coach who I trained with back in the day. And this is actually the 9-year anniversary since she started her program and I trained in that. So it is a really interesting time to be here because it doesn't feel like 9 years. But it has been, one of those journeys. I think we sometimes think that being entrepreneurs should look a certain way. And, it's got its ebbs and flows and ups and downs like anything else that we do in life. And when I first started out, it was because I was looking for something more fulfilling than I used to work in TV. In reality TV specifically here in Australia, which wasn't exactly what I had in mind when I got into the industry. And I was so exhausted and burnt out from working so hard and constantly feeling like I was being overlooked for roles and that it was just going to be so much harder for me because of maybe the way that I showed up in the world. And so I started to look externally for other options and ideas of what I could do and stumbled into blogging and coaching and realized that changing industries and going into my own business as an introvert was still something that was going to have different challenges similar to what I'd had at school and in my career to actually be seen and heard and cut through the noise. And I started to notice and have conversations with people who were experiencing the same thing, that just because you start a business that you're hoping will be in alignment with what you really want, creating a schedule that works for you and doing the things that you love, it doesn't mean that those not those challenges, but those things that we sometimes find ourselves up against aren't still there, and that we need to find a way to navigate that instead of falling back into the patterns and habits that we've kind of been conditioned into thinking that we should be doing. So it kind of evolves in a really organic way. And yeah, it's just my favorite thing. I just think that the way that leadership and business and success are presented to us are sometimes in a package that just isn't really in alignment for more introverted and highly sensitive people. And so I'm kind of out there fighting the fight of, hey, just because you're quiet doesn't mean you're not a force to be reckoned with. And just because success looks and feels different to you doesn't mean that you have to have success in a way that the world has told you that you should.
I love it. I love it. And I think it's so needed. I think I considered myself an introvert as well. And when people look at me, they're like, you're so extroverted. I'm like, no, I've learned to adapt, if anything. But the other thing too is I used to have the hardest time starting a conversation with anybody. Like,
Mm.
I could never have a conversation with someone until they approached me. I mean, can you relate?
Yes. I always feel so awkward in those situations. And I always find you probably are the same, that once you start talking about something you're really passionate about and you
Mm.
find that connection point with someone, that's when your personality comes out and people get confused, but they forget what you were like when they first met you. They just know you as they've gotten to know you and you come out of your shell more. So definitely.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why I love that you do this because I think when I felt more aligned as an introvert, and I used to call myself an introvert, I used to think I could never start my own business. I could
Yes.
never put myself out there, and it
Mm.
seems so unattainable. And so I love that you teach that. So tell us a little bit more about how have you been able to help? Do you have an example of maybe someone that you've transformed completely?
Yeah, I mean, I think of coaching in a co-created way, that I am not really like, I like to think of us as we're sovereign beings. We make a decision to step into something, and oftentimes someone will come along to hold us in that transformation or that journey that we're on ourselves. And so that's what I see my role as, working with introverts and highly sensitive people, that they've got something inside of themselves that they are so ready to bring into the world, and they have a mission and a vision of what that is. And sometimes they just need support and cheerleading and maybe some strategy that's going to actually help them do that in a way that isn't just following all of the generic advice that's out there, that actually doesn't take them and their strengths and their personality into consideration. So yeah, I've worked with people who haven't even wanted to start a business and thought that they were working with me because they were trying to work on some personal things, and have ended up realizing that, oh, there's something here that I can share with the world, and actually starting to put pieces in place to make that into a business. People who I've seen just come out of their shells, who have been scared to share their offers and their work, scared to be on social media. I mean, the number of people who are like, I'm never doing reels, I'm never going to speak to camera, who I've seen that as they become more confident in their message and the things that they care about, and realizing that when they show up as themselves, that's when their people are going to find them, that have started to do more video and more lives than I do. So, not because I'm pushing them to do those things, but because they start to realize that, hey, this is important. And sometimes this is more important, this bigger purpose, than the fear, than the fact that they might need to take a couple of hours off afterwards to re-energize. And that becomes the bigger driver behind what they're doing versus, yeah, not doing the thing, I guess.
Right, right. So let's talk about what did it take for you to get to this point? Because you said you were in TV before and you were kind of doing the thing, but as an introvert, how did you even get to TV? Like, how did you even get to that point?
Oh my goodness. So that's taking us back a long time. I don't know what it's like in the US, but here, when you're like, and I don't know what it's like now, but when I was like 15 years old, they basically sat us all down in an assembly in a room and said, this is when you choose your subjects that you do in senior in high school. That's going to tell you what you get into at university, and that's going to determine basically your career for the rest of your life. And that has always felt like a lot of pressure to put on a 15-year-old who has no
Right.
idea what they're doing. But because I was always a quieter kid and a more kind of socially anxious person, one of the ways that I always found that kind of safety, but also found ways to relate to other people, was through movies and TV. And so that just became a huge passion of mine. And I decided when I was 15, oh, I love movies. I guess maybe that's a direction I'll go into. And then followed the pipeline, the good girl pipeline of do well at school, because that's how you get into, the right courses, and that's how you get into a career that you love. And so it kind of just led to that. And where I live, there aren't a lot of opportunities to work in the industry, or there definitely weren't at the time, and except for Big Brother, which filmed on the Gold Coast. And so I just happened to get into working on the last couple of seasons of that show. And once you get in, it's one of those things, it's like such a networking industry. When you meet people and get to know them, you kind of just get move around from job to job from there. So yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, I guess I'll do that and see what
Wow.
happens. And I don't regret that time at all. It was such a beautiful time for me to come out of my shell, and the connections and the people that I met during that time, and the things that I learned, and yeah, just the experience itself. I never regret that. But I also don't know if I would be doing what I do today if I hadn't gotten so frustrated with wanting a creative outlet and wanting more control over my schedule, that led me to starting my own business.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. So why was that so important to you? I mean, clearly sometimes that's usually what happens, right? Either we make a decision or a decision is made for us. Take us to
Yeah.
that time that that decision was just eating away at you. What did that look like?
It's so funny because it wasn't really an overnight kind of aha moment.
Mm,
Basically, I moved from Brisbane, where I live in Queensland, down to Sydney because that was where all of the work was. And so it was there was a moment where I went, okay, you have to make a decision. Are you going to go all in on this, or are you going to let it pass you by and do something else? And my partner and I decided, look, give it a go, because if you don't do it, you'll never know. And it was sort of like one of those life moves. It was around the time, oh gosh, I'm going to age myself here, and I can't even remember when it was, but it was around the time where blogging was just becoming this huge thing. It was becoming its own industry. And I thought, oh, that would be a really cute way to keep in contact with all my people up here, and I guess document what I'm doing, and just kind of like a little lifestyle blog type thing. But I really loved it. And when you're working in TV in the way that it looks versus the way that it actually is, I needed a creative outlet as just a creative person to be able to do my own thing.
mhm,
And so it was kind of like, go and grind all day on set, and then come home and actually just do something to feel like myself again. And it just kind of over a couple of years started to do that. And that was sort of when the rise of, opt-ins and B school and things like that all happened. And so it was just kind of a timing thing. I was in a new city, and so I was meeting up with other bloggers and people who were like, oh, you should do this program, you should do this, or starting businesses and things. And it's just sometimes these things, are just serendipitous, and they just sort of happen. But I remember at the time being so nervous that I was going to be telling people that I was going to leave TV and start my own business, and what people would think in the industry of like, oh, why would you do that? But I didn't even want to tell people that I was doing it. But yeah, it just got to a point where, same thing, one of those turning points where you go, am I going to keep fighting for this, or
mhm.
am I going to step into something new?
I love it. I love it. That took a lot of courage. You are a
Yes.
courageous leader. So that is so amazing. I love that you made that decision, because I think a lot of us have that option. A lot of us, we get to that point where we find something that we can be really good at. We all have it. We all have something that's innate in us, right? Something that comes naturally to us, and we think, doesn't everybody do this? And then you discover, oh no, not everyone has that talent, and I
Mm,
can serve with that talent, or I can help with that talent. And that's what it's been for me as well,
mm,
and so to take uh that step, that leap, and just really go and
mm.
leave the security behind. It can be scary. It can be
Yes.
scary. So tell us, what does courage mean to you? Because we don't always define that as courage necessarily, even especially when we're in the middle of it, right? It doesn't seem courageous. You're just kind of like, either I'm a little crazy or I'm just gonna, or I'm brilliant. I don't know. What does it mean to you?
That's such a great question. And I feel like there's a quote that I'm going to absolutely butcher because it just popped into my head when you were saying that. So I'm not even going to
Love it.
try.
That's okay.
But I feel like most of us, when we think of courage, I know for myself personally, even just you saying it, I think of courage as one of those moments, as one of those crossroad moments where you have to make a decision to continue on with the thing that you know, or to step into something else that your heart is telling you to do, that it's this big lion roar moment. And I think that it's important that we reframe that sometimes courage is one tiny little step. Sometimes courage looks like, mouse-sized bites of cheese. Sometimes it's not a big courageous throw everything in and hope that it works out, or blow up your life and move in a totally different direction. Sometimes courage is deciding to stay, or to deciding to continue on and keep going. And I know in business that is a decision that I make every single day. It's especially on those days when it's feeling a little bit harder, or something happens that's out of our control. We can feel like, oh, maybe I should just quit now. And sometimes courage is that little voice in the back of your head or in your heart saying, just keep going,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
one more day. And so, yeah, I think it's being really true to yourself and making a decision that's in alignment with that, regardless of what other people might think or what our fear is telling us. Actually keeping coming back to our own truth and keeping following our path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. So, how does that show up in your everyday life? I mean, clearly you're telling yourself that, but I mean, it can be in the smaller decisions too, right? It doesn't have to be in like the big decisions like, oh, am I gonna quit my business? It can be in the little things. How do you see it in your everyday life?
Yeah, great question. I think what it how it presents itself for me is those moments where you're about to share something vulnerable that you know that your people are going to really resonate with, and that's an important part of your story and your transformation. And it's that hovering over the publish button,
Yeah.
or the hovering over the send the email button.
Yes.
It's that moment before you hit live, go live
Mhm.
on a video. It's that voice in your head being like, oh, it's not really perfect yet, maybe we'll wait a little bit longer. And it's kind of putting it out there anyway in its imperfection, because that's the journey. That if we wait until it's perfect, or wait until we feel ready, that those days will probably never come. And so I've really learned, I think, to embrace the human messiness and using that as a way to actually relate to people. We're seeing I'm definitely seeing a trend online of this idea of de-influencing, and I love that, because I think that there's been a very big era of presenting a certain polished, curated way of who you are. And I think people are sick of that. And I think that people feel like they know they're never going to reach that. And we're starting to see a little bit of kind of like, oh yeah, that again. And I think that when we, doing those little things that are a bit scary, putting things out there that aren't quite ready yet, or that feel a little bit like, ooh, when you're about to hit publish, those little moments of courage are the thing that our people who truly relate to us and resonate with us and can see themselves in our journey, which gives them permission and possibilities of what they can do, is what actually people love about following you and connecting with you. Is they realize you're not perfect, and you're still having, you still have bad days some days, or you still have things go wrong. Your life isn't perfect. You're still working it out yourself, because that gives them permission to be learning and making mistakes and failing forward, as I always say. Instead of, it's like, oh, there's this perfect person there that I'll never be. Instead, it's like, oh, she's not perfect either, but she's out there doing it. Maybe I can too.
Yes, yes. I love that you brought that up because then it doesn't make it so unattainable anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's when you can say, "Oh, okay, yeah, other people are doing it. They're doing it a little bit messy and they're still having success. Maybe I can do this." And it does take that little step over
Mm.
the edge for you to just say, "Come on, take the leap. You know, we'll catch you. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for."
Yeah, and you're not doing it alone. There's a
Exactly.
whole bunch of us out here doing it imperfectly every day as well.
Yes, exactly. As you already know, my friend Kaisa and I decided to do this together, and we've done summits by ourselves, on our own, and we've grown our business on our own separately. But let me tell you what, us doing this together has held us both to a different level of accountability
Mm,
where because I don't know about you, but the way I work is I will work harder when I have someone else holding me accountable.
definitely.
I think that's most people. Than when I'm
Yeah.
holding myself accountable because
Mm,
when I have things that I know I absolutely must do, but I'm just not feeling it one day, I'm kind of like, I'm going to take a break. And my little break, my
mm,
1 day break might be a 3 day break. And then I fall behind, right?
yeah.
But knowing that I also have committed working hard with my friend Kaisa, it just it gets me up in the morning. There are
Mm,
no excuses anymore. It's like, no, it's not
mhm.
just me. This is both of us, and we both committed that to each other, and
Yeah.
it's been beautiful. It's been empowering, and
Mm,
it lets me know the power of team you
yeah.
know and that's what a coach can do for you.
Mm,
And I know I love that about coaching because it's literally like, come on, lock arms with me, I'll help you. Yeah, you fall a little bit, it's okay, I got you, let's get up, dust it off, let's go again,
mhm.
let's go again. It's like the training wheels, right?
Yeah.
It's like those training wheels that you get to have, and you have someone in your corner cheering you on, and you know you're gonna make it because it's like when someone's running behind you too, right? Like you go a little bit
Yeah.
faster. So
Yeah.
I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that part. And I think it's beautiful, and it's so fitting, especially when we're introverted and we think we're out there alone and we think, oh, introverts don't do this. Actually, introverts do great things. They're pretty amazing at it because, I mean, in my experience, introverts are observers. And I think
Mm.
when you observe, you have a superpower. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about what that might be? I know what it means to me, but what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I actually just said this on a podcast the other day, and it just came to me in the moment. And I think it's always really important to add a caveat there that there are traits that are probably assigned to introverts and extroverts, and some of them are great ones and some of them are not so great.
Sure.
And that at any moment, we all have the ability to embody those traits as well. And so I think extroverts have just as much ability to observe and pay attention to what's going on around them. But I do definitely love that as someone who does identify as being more introverted, as not always needing to fill the space, not always needing to be saying something, and
Mhm.
actually learning more from observing and listening by stepping back and seeing the bigger picture sometimes. And I
Yes.
think sometimes we can get so, and again, this can be like, this can work out of our favor as well when we get in our heads and we start
Sure.
overthinking. There's
Sure.
pros and cons to it, but being able to step back and actually see the bigger picture can help us to really see where we fit into that as well.
Mm,
And as a coach, you know, finding that when we're working with our clients, as a business person, finding that space that we can fit in there. And then it's having the courage to actually take the action, which I know sometimes we can get in our heads and maybe not be so great at that part. Accountability, as you mentioned, so important.
mhm.
Sharing the labor, sharing the pay, the work that you have to actually do.
Yeah.
Such a great, like, that's just such a great tip for everyone, but especially for people who are having to manage their energy doing live events, doing video. These all require a lot of energy from us, and actually being able to take a step back and let someone else take on some of that labor as well, so that we're sharing the load, can be so helpful. And it means that you don't have to be the spotlight all the time, and you can take that step back and observe and pay attention and see where there's maybe a piece missing while you're, maybe having an extrovert in your corner doing some of the more front facing stuff, can allow you to step back and see what are we missing, what do we still need here, what piece can we include here that isn't being said, but I'm noticing this happening. And I think, I'm not sure if everyone here who's watching this is in business themselves, but this also translates across into our interpersonal relationships, into the workplace, into the school system if you're studying, like all of the ways that we show up in the world. That ability to step back and observe can allow us to, I guess, see things that aren't quite working or could be better, or where there's a place for us to show up and share our gifts as well, which I think is important.
100%. I love that. I love how you brought that up, because everything we do affects everything we do, right? And so if we're able to uh, show up in our power in whatever it is, if we're showing up in our power in our own business, that translates into how you show up for your family, and then that translates
Yeah.
into how you show up for your community. And that's really how we change the world, right? Because when
Yeah.
we're good inside, then we spread good. And I love, love, love that you brought that together full circle. Thank you so much for doing it so beautifully. We can go on and on and on about this topic, but
I know.
I do want to make sure that we cover that Katherine has a very, very special gift for our audience. And I'd like to talk to that a little bit, or I'd like for Katherine to speak to it a little bit. Would you like to do so?
So, yeah, thank you so much for allowing me to share this with everyone as well. So I have actually pulled out a piece of my Secret Introverts Business membership, one of my favorite planners from within that. It's called the Introvert Friendly Business Planner, super straightforward. And I think what we can sometimes do is forget in every business program I've been a part of personally, there's no mention of what do you need, how do you work best, what are your strengths, what is your schedule need to look like in order for you to thrive. And so the planner is just starting to think about, where are you now in your business versus where you want to be, what's the gap there that you need to kind of work out, but also what are the hours that you have the most energy, where you might schedule your calls in that time. What are your boundaries around how many days a week you're doing calls or being, client facing, versus days that you are going to take off to relax, chill out, re-energize, do some quiet work. Really just thinking about all of those different pieces that are actually going to help you to build a business that is actually playing to your strengths, instead of wishing that you worked a different way and you could do 10 calls a day every day, which is definitely something that I can't do. And so I kind of put this together in a planner to actually start thinking about that and starting to make little tweaks in your business, in your work schedule, in the way that you show up, and the boundaries that you have when someone invites you to be on something. Do you have the capacity for that? Is it within the time that you're able to actually be at your best? And so starting to think about those things and implement that. So yeah, that's what the planner is.
Oh, I love it. That's perfect. And that is perfectly aligned with, you having it all, because you can have it the way it works for you, the way that you function. This is
Yeah.
like really you taking your life and taking control in every aspect. That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Katherine. We will have the link for you along with this video, so we'll make sure we get that to you. And other than that, we are pretty much at time here, Katherine. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with your gift today. Do you have any final words of wisdom before we leave the audience?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. Look, I just think, especially for more introverted people doing this work, showing up, wanting to be courageous and be leaders, that sometimes we have a social conditioned version of what we think that should look like. And really at the end of the day, what we need to do, whether you're introverted or extroverted or highly sensitive or on the neurodivergent spectrum or none of those things, what we need to really do is actually know ourselves so well, how we show up best, what our strengths are, what skills we've brought with us to this point, and create businesses, show up in the world, share our message in a way that's aligned with who we are and what we do best, versus what's trending right now and what seems to be the popular hacks and tips and tricks for, steps to success and that sort of thing. And actually coming back to what's really true for me and what does success look like for me versus like what we think success should look like. It is not easy to do, but I genuinely believe when we make decisions from that place, we make aligned decisions, we call in the right people, and we feel fulfilled in the work that we do instead of feeling like we have to follow what everybody else is doing.
Oh, that is so perfect. Beautifully said. And I couldn't
Thank
agree
you.
more. Thank you so much, Catherine. And thank you so much for you and the audience and our VIP guests who are getting this very special message. We're so grateful for you. And thank you for joining us on Courage to Lead. And thank you, Catherine, once again. We hope you all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.